Have you ever noticed how some people mistake anger for strength, thinking that shouting louder means they've won the argument? Or how some believe self-respect means matching other people's energy even when that energy is pure poison? Here's the truth. Every time you fight fire with fire, you might win the battle, but you lose something far more precious: yourself. Most people think self-respect is about standing up to toxic people, yelling back when they yell, manipulating when they manipulate, proving that you won't be disrespected. They mirror the very behavior they hate, thinking that's power. And yes, sometimes they do win. They shut someone down. They walk away feeling strong for a moment. But deep down, something inside them feels off. Because what they've actually lost isn't the argument, it's their peace, their integrity, their sense of who they are. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. They knew that the instant you let someone else control your reaction, you've already surrendered your self-respect. Marcus Aurelius said it best. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Self-respect isn't about proving your worth to people blind to it. It's about staying calm, centered, and noble when someone else chooses chaos. It's about holding your standards even when someone else abandons theirs. You don't have to be louder. You don't have to be crueler. You don't need to mirror their toxicity just to prove a point. True strength lies in refusing to become what you're standing against. Today, we'll explore 6 Stoic principles that will help you maintain unshakable self-respect around toxic people, not by defeating them, but by mastering yourself. And when we get to principle number 3, you'll see why it's the hardest. It requires you to do the exact opposite of what your emotions scream for. But it's also the one that protects your dignity most powerfully. By the end of this video, you'll know how to stay grounded, calm, and dignified, even when surrounded by people trying to break you. So if you're tired of letting toxic people steal your peace, if you're ready to reclaim your self-respect, let's begin. Principle number 1. Separate their behavior from your worth. When a toxic person attacks, criticizes, or belittles you, your instinct is to take it personally, to wonder if maybe they're right, to defend yourself, to fight back. But here's what you must remember. Their cruelty is a reflection of their wounds, not your flaws. Their behavior reveals their character, not your value. The moment you start defending your worth to someone whose perception is warped by pain, you hand them power they never deserved. I once witnessed this clearly between 2 employees under the same toxic manager. A man who criticized relentlessly, found fault in everything, and made everyone feel incompetent no matter how well they performed. The first employee, Sarah, took every word to heart. She stayed late, redid her work, and constantly sought validation until she lost sleep, confidence, and eventually belief in herself. The second employee, James, responded differently. When that same manager tore him apart, he'd pause, calmly evaluate what was true, take what was useful, and let go of the rest. When I asked how he managed not to take it personally, he said, "That man breaks everyone down. It's not about me. It's about whatever's broken in him that needs to hurt others to feel powerful. I won't let his damage define my worth." That's the wisdom Sarah never found. And the mastery Stoicism teaches, when someone is perpetually toxic, constantly critical, habitually cruel, it's never about you. It's about them. When you truly grasp that a toxic person's cruelty says more about them than you, something inside you shifts. You stop reacting with pain and start responding with wisdom. Hurt people. Insecure people tear others down just to feel a brief moment of superiority. Unhappy people spread their misery because shared pain feels lighter than facing it alone. Once you truly understand this, that their behavior is a symptom of their inner chaos, not a judgment on your worth, you stop taking it personally. Not because you're cold or dismissive, but because you finally see the truth behind the mask. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come from it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger. That doesn't mean accepting mistreatment or pretending it's okay. It means recognizing that toxic people lash out from their own pain, and that understanding keeps their poison from entering your soul." So how do you practice this in real life? The next time someone toxic criticizes you, pause. Take a breath before reacting. Ask yourself quietly, is this about me or is this about them? Look at the pattern. Do they criticize everyone? Is their negativity a constant cloud that follows them wherever they go? Do they project their own failures and fears onto others? Most of the time, the answer is yes. Their attack is not personal. It's simply their pain looking for a place to land. And you just happen to be standing nearby. Take only what's useful from their words. If there's even a fragment of truth hidden in their cruelty, extract it. Learn from it if you can. But the venom, the personal insults, the bitterness, the attempts to tear down your character, those belong to them, not to you. Don't carry what was never yours to hold. True self-respect means knowing your worth independent of broken people's opinions. It means you can hear criticism without letting it rewrite your identity, because you understand what they've forgotten. How someone treats you says everything about them, and nothing about your value. And when you truly, deeply believe that, their power to wound you disappears. But awareness alone isn't enough. Knowing they project their pain is one thing. Managing your energy around it is another. And that brings us to the next Stoic truth. Principle number 2. Control only what you can control. When a toxic person is in your life, your instinct is to fix them, to make them see reason, to explain yourself more clearly, to prove you're right, so they'll finally stop. You rehearse conversations in your mind. You craft perfect responses. You strategize ways to make them behave differently. And yet, all that effort, all that mental and emotional energy leads nowhere. Because here's the hard truth. You cannot control them. You can only control yourself. And every minute you spend trying to change someone who refuses to change is a minute you've let them control you. I remember my cousin Lisa. She spent 5 long years trying to fix her relationship with her toxic mother. Every visit ended in criticism. Every phone call turned into an argument. Her mother found fault in everything. Lisa's career, her parenting, her marriage. Nothing was ever good enough. Still, Lisa tried. She explained herself better. She shared her achievements, her promotions, her efforts to make peace. She even asked, "Mom, what would make you proud of me?" But nothing worked. The criticism didn't stop. It just shifted targets. I watched her pour her heart into this endless struggle until one day, she sighed and said something that changed everything. "I can't make her see me differently. I've been trying to control her opinion, and that's not my power. The only thing I can control is how I respond when she attacks me. And I'm choosing to stop defending myself to someone determined not to understand." That moment, that shift, saved her sanity. She stopped chasing validation and started practicing self-mastery. Because when you stop trying to control others and focus only on how you respond, that's when peace returns. When Lisa stopped trying to control her mother, something remarkable happened. She stopped explaining, stopped defending, and stopped chasing approval that was never coming. So when her mother criticized her choices, Lisa no longer argued or justified. She simply replied, calmly and firmly, "I've heard your opinion. I'm comfortable with my choice." Then she would gently change the subject or, if needed, end the conversation altogether. Her mother didn't change. The criticism didn't disappear. But Lisa's relationship with that toxicity changed completely because she finally understood what the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught over 2,000 years ago. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, our desires, our motives, and our choices. Beyond our power are things like our body, property, reputation, and position. In short, anything not of our own doing. Their behavior? Not within your power. Their words, their judgments, their toxicity, none of that belongs to your control. But your response to it? That's entirely yours. So here's how you practice this truth. When a toxic person provokes you, before you react, pause. Ask yourself quietly, what's actually in my control right now? The answer is never them. It's not whether they apologize. It's not whether they change. It's not whether they finally see your perspective. The only thing in your control is you. How you choose to respond, what boundaries you set, and how much energy you're willing to give that moment. When you stop focusing on changing them and start focusing on governing yourself, something powerful shifts inside you. You reclaim your sovereignty. They can still be toxic. Their words may still sting, but they no longer have control over your peace. Because you've stopped trying to manage what was never yours to manage. That's what self-respect really is. Self-governance. When you try to control toxic people, they end up controlling you through your frustration, your anxiety, your sleepless nights replaying their words in your mind. But when you govern yourself, you break free. Not because they've changed, but because you have. If you've spent years trying to change a toxic person, and you're finally ready to focus on what you can truly control, your reaction, your boundaries, your peace, write this in the comments. I choose me. It's not an easy shift. In fact, it's one of the hardest changes you'll ever make, but it's also the one that will give you your power back. Because understanding what you can and cannot control is essential. But the next principle takes that wisdom even deeper. The third principle is the hardest one of all. It's about what you do when they attack you. When every instinct inside you screams to strike back. Principle number 3. Don't mirror their toxicity. When someone comes at you with cruelty, every part of you wants to hit back harder. They insult you. You want to cut deeper. They manipulate you. You want to outsmart them. They spread lies. You want to destroy their reputation. And here lies the trap. You might win. You might hurt them back. You might even make them regret ever crossing you. But in fighting fire with fire, you quietly become the very thing you swore to resist. And in that moment, you lose the one thing that truly matters, yourself. I once saw this play out with a colleague named David. He worked beside someone truly toxic, a man who took credit for others' work, sabotaged projects, and spread rumors to climb higher. For months, David stayed calm. He took the high road even when it cost him. But one day, he snapped. He began playing the same game, collecting dirt on his coworker, undermining him in meetings, planting subtle rumors to turn others against him. And it worked. The toxic coworker got pushed out. David won. But victory felt hollow. When it was over, David sat in my office, eyes heavy, voice quiet. He said words I'll never forget. I got him fired, but I can't look at myself the same way anymore. David's words still echoed in my mind. I got him fired, but I can't look at myself the same way anymore. He realized too late that in trying to destroy his enemy, he had destroyed a part of himself. That's the real cost of mirroring toxicity. You might win the argument, the battle, or even the war, but you lose something far greater in the process, your integrity. David said, I became exactly what I hated about him. I won the fight, but I lost who I was. And that's the tragedy most people never see coming. Because when you fight filth with filth, you don't cleanse it. You spread it. You might defeat them in the moment, but you sacrifice your character to do it. and character. That's the only thing in life that truly belongs to you. Their behavior? Temporary. Their cruelty? Fleeting. But your integrity, that's permanent. It's the foundation of self-respect. When you abandon that integrity just to beat someone at their own game, you hand them the real victory. Because now they've succeeded in doing what they always wanted. They made you like them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Not louder, not crueler, not smarter at manipulation, just refusing to become what you're standing against." That's the real test of self-respect. Not whether you can outplay a toxic person at their game, but whether you can remain yourself when every part of you wants to descend to their level. And this, right here, is why this principle is the hardest to live by. Because it feels like losing. When they insult you and you choose silence, it feels like weakness. When they go low and you stay high, it feels like you're letting them get away with it. When you walk away instead of fighting back, it feels like you've surrendered. But the Stoics understood something profound. Descending to their level isn't strength, it's surrender. Real strength is staying kind when cruelty would be easier. It's staying honest when lies could serve you better. It's staying true to yourself when becoming like them would help you win. That's not weakness, that's mastery. So how do you practice this in the real world? Next time a toxic person attacks you, don't rush to react. Notice that surge of emotion, that urge to hit back harder. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then quietly ask yourself, if I do this, will I still respect myself tomorrow? Not, will I win? Not, will they finally learn their lesson? But, will I still be someone I can look in the mirror and respect? Because if the answer is no, if your reaction requires you to abandon your own values, then the price is simply too high. You don't defeat toxic people by becoming them. You defeat them by refusing to let them change who you are. Self-respect means being someone you respect. And if you have to become cruel, manipulative, or deceitful to win, then you haven't really won anything at all. You've only proven they had the power to make you betray yourself. Don't give them that satisfaction. The first three principles we've explored, mindset, control, and character, are inner work. They're about mastering your perception, your reactions, and your integrity. But the next three principles shift the focus outward, to action. What you actually do when you can't avoid toxic people, and you need to protect your peace in practical ways. Principle number 4, respond, don't react. Most people never learn the difference. Reaction is instant, emotional, automatic. Someone provokes you, and before you've even thought about it, the words are already out of your mouth. But a response, that's different. A response is deliberate, conscious, and chosen. You still feel the provocation, but instead of letting it control you, you pause and decide what to do with it. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed on it. They want to see that spark of anger, that flicker of frustration, proof that they've gotten under your skin. Because the moment you react, they win control over your emotional state. But when you give them a response instead, calm, measured, and intentional, you take that control back. Not control over them, but control over yourself. I saw this truth play out at a family gathering once. My uncle made a sly remark meant to humiliate my brother in front of everyone. A jab at his career and his choices, wrapped in that fake tone of concern that's really just cruelty wearing a polite mask. The old version of my brother would have exploded, defended himself, raised his voice, made a scene. But this time he didn't. He paused. He stood there for 3 full seconds, breathing slowly. Then he looked at my uncle and said, calmly and evenly, "I'm proud of my choices. I hope you can respect that." And he moved on. No defense. No justification. No explosion. Just quiet strength, the kind that can't be manipulated. My uncle tried to press further, tossing in another subtle jab. But my brother didn't take the bait. He simply smiled, calm and grounded, and changed the subject as if nothing had happened. Later that night, he told me quietly, "I felt the anger. It was there. It burned for a second. But I realized if I exploded, I'd just be giving him exactly what he wanted. Proof that he could control me. So instead, I chose a different response. And honestly, choosing that calm felt more powerful than any argument ever could. That's the essence of this practice. You can't stop emotions from rising. Anger, hurt, defensiveness, frustration, these are human. They're automatic. But what you do with those emotions, that's where your true power lives. Between the moment of provocation and the words leaving your mouth, there's a space, a small, sacred gap, maybe 3 seconds long. And inside that gap, everything depends on your choice. Do you react from emotion, or do you respond from your values? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The toxic person's words, their manipulation, their jabs, their insults, are the outside events. You can't control that. But that gap between what they say and what you say next, that's your mind. That's your domain. That's the only territory where your power truly exists, the power to govern yourself. So here's how to practice it. Next time someone toxic provokes you, do exactly what my brother did. Pause. 3 seconds minimum. Breathe. Feel the reaction rising in your chest, the heat, the impulse, the urge to defend. Notice it, but don't act on it. Then ask yourself, what response reflects who I actually am? Not who they're trying to make you become. Not the defensive, angry version they're baiting out of you, but who you are when you're at your best. Then, and only then, speak, or choose silence. Both are responses. Neither is a reaction. The difference is subtle but life-changing. Reactions give toxic people evidence that they've gotten to you. Responses prove to yourself that you've mastered your emotions. Because self-respect isn't built by winning arguments with toxic people. It's built by choosing your behavior, even when every nerve in your body is screaming to lose control. You've already learned not to mirror their toxicity. Now you've learned not to react to their provocations. But there's another step, one that turns your calm into strength and your silence into protection. Principle number 5. Set boundaries without explanation or apology. A boundary isn't a debate. It isn't a request. It's a statement. Yet most people treat their boundaries like they need permission to enforce them. They over-explain, over-justify, and apologize for taking up space. They say things like, "I can't do that because I'm really busy. I'm so sorry, but I already have plans. I hope you understand it's just been a hard week." Every justification becomes ammunition. Every apology becomes an open door for manipulation. Because the moment you explain why your boundary exists, you've invited a toxic person to debate it, and to them, your reasons will never be good enough. I watched my sister struggle with this for years. Her mother-in-law would call at all hours, demand visits on every holiday, and guilt-trip her for every decision. And my sister, kind and patient as she was, would explain endlessly why she couldn't always comply. "We're really tired this week. We already have plans." The kids need consistency in their schedule, but every reason only gave her mother-in-law another opening. "You're tired? I'll make it short. You have plans? Cancel them. Family comes first." The kids need consistency. Seeing their grandmother is consistency. Every justification became a new problem for the toxic person to solve. The boundary never held, because my sister treated it like a discussion, when in truth, it needed to be a decision. After years of explaining and apologizing, something finally shifted. One day, after yet another exhausting guilt trip, my sister simply said 5 words: calm, steady, unshakable. "That doesn't work for us." Her mother-in-law frowned. "Why not?" My sister repeated. "It doesn't work for us." Still not satisfied, she pressed harder, demanding an explanation. But my sister didn't take the bait. She looked her in the eye and said slowly, "I've told you our answer. The topic is closed. No explanation, no apology, no negotiation." And that changed everything. At first, her mother-in-law was furious, offended, frustrated, confused. But over time, the boundary held, because there was nothing left to argue with. My sister had learned something the Stoics understood thousands of years ago. A boundary without justification is a wall. A boundary with justification is a door they'll keep trying to open. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Most people fear that setting a firm boundary will destroy the relationship. But the truth is, what really destroys relationships isn't the boundary. It's the quiet resentment that builds up when you can't protect yourself. When you keep saying yes because you're too afraid to say no. That fear of disappointing others, of being seen as cold or unkind, it slowly eats away at your peace. And peace, once lost, is hard to recover. So here's how you practice it. The next time you need to set a boundary with a toxic person, make it clear and simple. "I'm not available for that. I don't discuss that topic. I won't be attending." No need for long explanations or emotional backstories. When they ask why, resist the urge to justify. You can simply say, "It's my decision," or "That's what works for me," or say nothing at all. And when they push, because they will, don't defend, don't explain, and don't apologize. Just calmly restate your boundary or end the conversation entirely, because a boundary isn't the beginning of a discussion. It's the end of one. Your boundary doesn't need to make sense to them. It doesn't require their understanding or their approval. It only needs to be clear and enforced. Self-respect means valuing your peace enough to protect it, even when doing so makes others uncomfortable. Especially when it makes toxic people uncomfortable. Because if you need their permission to have a boundary, then it's not really a boundary. It's just a suggestion they'll ignore the moment it stops serving them. You've now learned to respond instead of react. And you've learned to protect yourself with firm boundaries that don't need defending. But there's still one final principle, the quietest, and perhaps the most powerful of all. It's about mastering the art of silence, the kind of silence that doesn't come from fear, but from strength. Principle number 6, use silence as your shield. Not every insult deserves your reply. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every toxic comment needs to be corrected, debated, or even acknowledged. Most people think silence means agreement, weakness, or surrender, that if you don't respond, the other person wins. But silence isn't surrender. Silence is dismissal. It's the quiet way of saying, "You're not worth my words." When you respond to every jab, every sarcastic remark, every passive-aggressive dig, you're handing toxic people exactly what they crave. Your attention, your energy, your emotional reaction. That's how they know they can control you. But when you let it pass, when you meet their chaos with calm silence, you've refused to play their game. And a game with no opponent dies quickly. I once had a friend, Karen, who worked with a colleague that constantly made subtle, cutting remarks, little comments about her appearance, her work, her choices, always just vague enough to deny if confronted. but sharp enough to sting. For months, Karen defended herself every single time. She corrected, justified, and tried to prove that the remarks were unfair. But each time she responded, the comments came back stronger, because her reactions were feeding the fire. Then one day, after another sly comment, Karen did something different. She looked at her colleague, just for a moment, and said nothing, not a word, not a sigh, just silence, and that silence said everything. Karen turned back to her computer and kept working. No anger, no eye roll, no sigh, just quiet focus. The silence was so unexpected that her colleague tried again. Another snide remark, sharper this time, meant to provoke a reaction. Nothing. A third attempt came, more direct, almost desperate for attention. Still nothing. Karen didn't even look up. Within 2 weeks, the comments stopped. Completely. Not because the colleague changed, but because the game had lost its purpose. When there's no reaction to feed on, cruelty starves. Without response, it withers away. Just meaningless noise dissolving into silence. That's what silence does. Something no argument, no clever comeback ever could. It speaks a language toxic people can't understand, a language that says, "You're not important enough to engage with." Every time you respond, even if you're defending yourself, even if you're correcting a lie, you're confirming something, that their words matter to you, that they have the power to pull you into their chaos. But when you stay silent, you send a message far more powerful than any insult. I don't need to defend myself against you. You are beneath my notice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always have the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to trouble your soul about things you cannot control." Their provocations, their insults, their manipulation, their little traps are things you can't control. But your response, or your lack of one, is entirely within your control. And choosing silence isn't passivity. It's power. It's the active refusal to let someone else dictate how you spend your energy. So here's how you practice it. The next time a toxic person baits you with an insult, sarcasm, or passive-aggressive dig, pause. Ask yourself one question. Does this actually deserve my words? Not, can I win this argument? Not, should I let them get away with it? Just, is this worth my energy? 90% of the time, the answer is no. Let it die in the silence. Don't defend. Don't explain. Don't engage. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing they got to you. Just let their words fall flat and watch them evaporate into the quiet, because your silence isn't agreement. It's a refusal to participate in their game. Self-respect is knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are just noise designed to drain you. Toxic people thrive on reaction. Deny them that, and you've taken away their only weapon, not by defeating them in an argument, but by refusing to show up to the fight at all. These 6 Stoic principles aren't about conquering toxic people. They're about conquering yourself in their presence. Staying calm, grounded, and true when everything around you is trying to pull you down to their level. That is how you respect yourself. Not by proving anything to them, but by protecting who you are, no matter what they do. Remember, separate their behavior from your worth. Their cruelty reveals them, not you. Control only what you can control. Your response, never them. Don't mirror their toxicity. The best revenge is refusing to become like that. Respond, don't react. The gap between provocation and words is where your power lives. Set boundaries without apology. Protection doesn't need permission, and use silence as your shield. Not every battle deserves your energy. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal and cruelty every single day, and still, he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like that. Self-respect isn't about defeating toxic people. It's about refusing to let them change who you are. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a like so others can find these Stoic principles when they're struggling. And remember, you can't control toxic people, but you can absolutely control whether you stay yourself around them. That's self-respect. That's Stoic strength. That's freedom.